Good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Cyrsiau Carlam Cymru, and welcome to the first geography session. And this evening it's going to be led by Delod Davis. Over to you.
Prynhawn da, good afternoon everybody. My name is Miss Delod Davis and welcome to the first session of the course Carlam Cymru catch-up sessions for A-level geography. Today's session will focus on a very important aspect of the A-level course, which is the independent investigation and skills. So what is the latest situation? Well, as you are aware, there will be no exams in A-level geography this summer. Your independent investigation will not be externally assessed or moderated by WJC. Your geography teacher will determine your final grade this summer, and schools are actively encouraging pupils to still complete the independent investigation. And I'm quoting here from WJC, teachers should use the NEA, which is a non-exam assessment, to inform centre-determined grades. That is the grade that your teachers will determine for you. And anyway, undertaking a fieldwork investigation is an important part of the A-level geography spec, and the skills you will develop by doing the investigations are fantastic. It is definitely worth doing the independent investigation just for the skill and knowledge development alone. Basic skills that will only equip you when going to university. Here on the screen now, you will find the structure of the fieldwork. When writing your investigation, please use subheadings which will assist with the structure, and it will assist your teacher when it comes to marking and giving a mark for each section. Top of the list, you will see the abstract, which is a 200 to 250 word summary of your investigation. The abstract is the last section that you will write, but it's the very first thing people read when they want to have a quick overview of the whole investigation. I suggest that you leave writing the abstract to the very end, because by then you will have a clearer picture of all your findings and conclusions. I will now, in this presentation, go through each step of your investigation and how to create a successful independent investigation. First up is choosing your question and its context. When choosing the topic of your independent investigation, you have the freedom to choose anything that you want to write about, but it can't be completely random. It must be linked to the geography A-level specification. Choose something that's of real interest to you. For example, if you're from North East Wales, how about looking at Everton's new stadium in Bramley Moor Dock? This will link to Unit 2, Changing Places, because it looks at the urban rebranding and regeneration of the area in Liverpool. Currently, Everton's Goodison Stadium is in the middle of a suburban area. This will only hit the spec to Unit 2, Changing Places. So if that is of interest to you, go for it. Or if you want to do something more local to you, you could look at retail patterns and the effect of changing retail patterns on the local high street. Selecting your question, it is good practice to use wording such as to what extent, or a comparison of X and Y, or is blank a key factor in. These are good wording to include in your main question. Once you write your main question, you will need to choose your sub-questions or hypothesis. Okay, here are my top tips for your question. You want to keep it simple, don't overcomplicate it. Be realistic. Titles are often way too broad or unmanageable in terms of your geographical scale. You're looking at somewhere that's way too big, or think about how much time you've got to collect your data and to write this investigation, and it's only 3,000 to 4,000 words, so you have to be realistic. Once you choose your main question, you need your sub-questions. About 3 of these is a good number. If you don't want to do a sub-question, which you will find the answer for, you could word this in a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a kind of prediction where you just write a statement and you will prove if that statement is correct or not during the investigation. When choosing your research topic, here are some things to consider. Which broad area of the specification have I enjoyed and found interesting? You are going to spend a lot of time writing the investigation. Choose something that you're going to enjoy writing. What in particular do I like about this topic and why? What questions do I want to find the answer to? And are these questions geographical? What do geographers already know about this topic? How am I going to make my research unique and different? Don't do an investigation into something that you already know the answer to or anybody knows the answer to. How to make it unique and different. How much time do I have to complete the research involved? In what location might I be able to study this topic? Well, this may not be suitable due to COVID, but where am I going on my fieldwork? And what data could I collect or use? So these are the things to consider when choosing your topic and your question. On the screen now, I have an example of what makes a good question. I have the wording to what extent here. So to what extent is height the main factor, that's a good word, on the distribution of glacial corries in Snowdonia. So if you in school in year 12 in unit 1 did glacial landscapes instead of coast, you could do something like that. But if you did coastal, you could do how and why does beach profiles vary along the coastline in Penarth? To what extent are groins the most effective coastal management strategy in Borth? To what extent does quality of life vary between the inner city of Riverside and the outer suburban area of Whitchurch in Cardiff? So there's 2 geographical areas there. You're not saying to what extent does quality of life vary in all of Cardiff. You've narrowed it down. So here we have the context. This is the first section that will be marked. And here you would want to define the key words in your main question. For example, if your work is on deprivation, define deprivation. If your work is on studentification, what does that term mean? Okay. Explain the detail of the topic to the reader. What is the overall aim of your investigation? Describe your location. Why here? If you're going to do Riverside and Whitchurch, we need a map. How far away from each other are they? Pay attention to geographical conventions here. You must define your sub-questions or hypotheses and apply a background theory to the title. Refer to geographical literature and results of earlier work or similar topic but in other locations. In order to do the context well, And in order to choose the correct sub-questions to your investigation, you must read around the subject. By reading around the subject, the sub-questions or the hypothesis will come naturally towards you. You might gravitate down a particular path. So the more that you read around the subject, the better and more well-informed I find my pupils to be. Here we have some geographical literature tips. So in the context, whilst you're reading around that geographical literature, you should aim to show what is already known about your topic by geographers, any models or theories in relation to your topic, particularly if it's a physical geography one, show where any gaps in the existing geographical knowledge may occur and how your study will fill them, and suggest why it's important to study this particular topic, why have you chosen this topic. So, as I said previously, if well written and comprehensive, the lit review should naturally lead the reader to consider the research questions and hypotheses. We're now going towards the second step of your investigation, which is the data collection. The mark scheme states that you need a mixture of qualitative and quantitative methods of data collection and fieldwork skills. Quantitative data often comes in the form of numerical data, whereas qualitative research yields data that is not numerical. So examples of qualitative include photos. You could conduct interviews, open-ended questions in questionnaire. Closed-ended questions could be quantitative, and field sketches as well. Okay, so please use a combination of both qualitative and quantitative research in your investigation. You must also consider which sampling strategy you will employ carefully. Sampling is needed in almost all forms of data collection, as in most research, it's just simply not possible to gain data from every available sources. You must use a sampling strategy. There are three common sampling strategies. They are random, stratified, and systematic. With random, the sources of data are chosen in a completely haphazard way. I here would use a random number generator from Google that will generate numbers from 1 to 25. And that if I want, let's say, 6 numbers, and the random number generator will generate 6 numbers for me, and I go to that there in order to connect data. The second one is stratified. Here you divide your sampling into groups. For example, you could, if you're measuring a stretch of a beach, you could separate the beach into 3 parts, and then you sample in each part. Or if you are doing a human geography one, you could sample 5 people from each age category. And you also have systematic sampling, which is completely non-random, and chosen data is evenly distributed. For example, you choose every 10th person that passes, or you time every 5 minutes. Okay. Once you decide on your sampling strategies, you must justify why you chose that particular one in your data collection section, which is the methodology. Please use a combination of both primary and secondary sources of data collection. And think of alternative and creative ways. For example, if you're doing a human geography investigation, primary sources include old photographs, old adverts, local census data, old large-scale street maps, and the best of all, local people. Those who have lived in an area for many years have a wealth of memories, experiences, and personal views which you can tap into. We are living in an unprecedented time. You could conduct remote surveys. For example, on Google Maps, you can go back in time and you can compare a street and street view now with what it was like back in 2008. You could use WhatsApp or Microsoft Forms to do a survey in order to collect data. Also quite valuable that people sometimes forget are social media sites. For example, Twitter and TripAdvisor are useful sources of secondary data. If you are going to undertake a physical geography investigation, you can source equipment very cheaply online. And remember, people forget this about physical investigation. Annotating photos, you can do that in a physical geography investigation, and it's a qualitative research method. Right, a popular mode of primary research is a questionnaire. Questionnaires can yield both qualitative and quantitative data. However, you must do it correctly and carefully. Think about each question in your questionnaire. Will that question generate the data that you'll need? Some people think that questionnaires can be a bit overrated, only because you're not using it correctly. Okay? You must look at each question that you've written and think, right, what information do I want to do with the information I'll get from that question? How am I going to present it? If you're looking for a particular type of information, make sure you insert a question in the questionnaire that will help you get the answers. However, you don't always have to do a questionnaire. Please consider other modes of qualitative data. For example, setting up an interview, or you could even set up a focus group. And in COVID times, you can do that on Zoom or Google Meets, and you collect data that way. That will actually be easier to do it online now than it ever would have been in person. So I'm sure many more people will also take part knowing that it's online rather than face-to-face. Okay. My top tip for writing the investigation is this. When writing your methodology, a stranger should be able to read your work and be able to reenact it and repeat it exactly as you had described. So when you're writing your investigation, somebody like me, a stranger, should be able to read it and redo it. For example, where were you? What data collection sheet did you use? What equipment or app did you use to collect data? What sampling strategy did you use? Why did you use that sampling strategy? What was the size of your sample? How long were you there for? These are the things that you want to write about in your methodology. Here I've got a slide on GIS, Geographical Information Systems, and the opportunities you can have by using GIS are endless, and it can be used in numerous ways. You don't have to use it in data presentation. You don't have to just use it in collecting data, but you could use GIS when you're trying to choose your initial question by exploring areas. You can choose GIS in your data collection. For example, Data Shine. Data Shine is a really useful website that has taken census data and it's mapped it. Very useful for human geography investigations, and I use plenty of DataShine. And also you could use GIS in data presentation, which is map mapping. GIS can quickly draw a range of maps from your data, making it easy to produce the most appropriate map for the inquiry that you've got. We are in an unprecedented times due to COVID, and collecting primary data can be difficult. But on the WJC website, there's this PDF document, Fieldwork on Your Doorstep, a guide for students and teachers. And it's handy. It's got ideas in there on how you can do a COVID-friendly investigation. And on the screen there, I've got a quote from the document. So working to collect data and develop fieldwork skills in environments affected by the COVID-19 pandemic provides challenges, but also opportunities. And that's really important. It will be more difficult in some aspects, but you only need to be more creative. Instead of doing an investigation or questionnaires interview or questionnaires face-to-face, do it online. Google Forms, Microsoft Forms, Zoom, Google Teams, Google Meets or Microsoft Teams. These are the things that you can use to collect data. You can use Street View. There's tons of sources online. Now that you've collected your data, you must now present it. This is worth 10 marks. Here, you must use an extensive and correct use of cartographic, which is putting information on maps, and graphical skills. Sophisticated techniques that take skill to complete. You're now A-level geographers, doing bar, a series of bar and line graphs and circle graphs won't cut it. You need to be more sophisticated. Please present your data correctly. For example, you could put numerous graphs on one page that could help compare, but be aware of the Y scale, the vertical scale on your graph. If the scales aren't the same in each graph, then it's not going to be an effective mode of comparison. So make sure that the graph is correct, but also that the scales are similar. If you're annotating maps or photographs, do it in detail, because annotating maps or photographs, it may seem maybe simple, but it does take skill. And there are plenty of ideas on presenting your data in the Royal Geographical Studies Fieldwork Handbook. It's a PDF. It's a large document, but it's so handy, and that can be found on the website. But what's really useful as well for presenting data is the Field Studies Council. There are tons of different graphs and mapping techniques there, and then you could just get inspiration. Most commonly, you just need inspiration on what to do, because I'm sure that you'll be able to suss it out and do it, but you just need the idea. So if you go on RGS or Field Studies Council to gather ideas, and that will help you. Next, we move on to the analysis and interpretation of your findings. You can structure this via each hypothesis or sub-question. If you're doing it via subheadings, it will give you structure and make sure that you cover and answer everything. To reach the higher marks, here is where you would use the statistical techniques, for example, the rank-Spearman, chi-square or standard deviation statistical tests. But before the analysis, all the way back when you were collecting your data, think about beforehand, right, I want to do a statistical test. Therefore, I need this type of data. I see too often pupils going to the analysis saying, I want to do a rank spearman, but they don't have 2 sets of variable data to enable them to do the rank spearman. Okay, so think before writing the analysis what statistical test you want to do. You don't have to do it, but it does look well. Use your background reading and your primary and secondary data whilst writing the analysis. And is there a link between your investigation and other aspects in geography? For example, if the retail patterns in your local town is changing, is it influenced by another external factor? Is there something else that is influencing your results? And do not analyze without interpret. If you're analyzing data, you're crunching the data that you've collected and you're just saying what it shows. Interpreting is saying, what does it actually mean? What does the data that you've collected actually show us about the theory? I've taken a screenshot on the picture on the screen there of a book that's available in bookshelves and Amazon, and this will help you with presenting data, but also the statistical techniques. There's step-by-step how to do them. If not, there's also YouTube tutorials if you want to do some statistical techniques and you're unaware of how to do it. But you don't have to do it, but it's a good practice. And then we go on to look at the conclusion, which is 10 marks. Here, you must refer correctly to secondary data, concise findings that answers or refers to the main question or hypothesis, whatever you've chosen, but do not repeat your analysis. On the screen here, I've got a little tick list. Have a quick read of the tick list there now. And it's good practice when you're writing good a conclusion to check off that you've written about all those things. So 30 seconds just to look at the conclusion there. Look at the last one. It says, can you propose an adaptation or new theory to explain results? High level addition. That is the highest band. Can you think of a theory that can explain your result? Can you link your work to other aspects in geography? Okay. And here we are in the evaluation. I want to refer you to the mark weighting, which is 20 marks. That's 25% of the marks awarded for this usually in a non-COVID year. And because it's worth 20 marks, which was 25% of the weighting, I would reserve 25% of the word count as well for the evaluation. So the coursework is supposed to be between 3,000 and 4,000 words. I would write the evaluation in around 800 to 1,000 words. Here, you must systematically evaluate each step in your investigation. In the evaluation, I would put subheadings: context, the evaluation of context, evaluation of methodology, evaluation of data collection methods. This will make it extra clear to the marker that you've systematically evaluated each step in your investigation, which is the second bullet point, rigorous evaluation of each step. You can include inspirational ideas for further research. You should reflect on any ethical dimensions involved in the field research. Right, when it comes to ethics, you should consider things like confidentiality when you were doing the interviews, the consent for observing people, Access to site. Did you gain permission? Did you have permission to access a site? Maybe any potential damage. How to avoid nuisance or offence. If you're doing an investigation into deprivation and you've gone into a deprived area and collected data, you need to be sensitive. Courtesy in interviewing people, dress code, and any attributions to resources, materials, or plagiarism. Ethical dimensions is going to be seen in the top band of the mark scheme, so please consider that in your work. And lastly, consider weaknesses in the study and ways to overcome the limitations in your investigation. You know, have there been something that you haven't considered? Is my study partial? Right, because this is worth 25% of the mark weighing and it's very important, here are some key terms that you should use in the evaluation of data collecting methods. You should use words such as true value of the data. You should use the word accuracy, the word precision, and the word errors. These are words that you should use when evaluating your data collecting methods. On the screen now, here are the key terms to include in the evaluation of your data presentation techniques. So the accuracy of each graph and the validity of the technique you used. Can you maybe think of other ways that you could have presented that data? Here we have the top band. I've screenshotted here the band 5 for each section. When your teacher is going to mark your investigation, they'll have the context in front of them and they'll mark you out of 10 marks for the context. When teachers decide on a mark, they firstly decide on a band. They look to see what band does your context or your methods of field investigation fall into. And once they've decided on a band, only then they will decide on what mark. For example, bands range from 5 to 1. Please look at the top band for each section when writing it. That will help you to know what to write in order to reach the high marks and to lead you down the right path. I've highlighted in yellow here the important aspects of the mark scheme because I understand it's a lot of writing. I'm not going to go through it all, I don't have the time, but please look carefully at the top band and make sure that you've hit it. What you're going to see often, and I've highlighted them in yellow, are words such as sophisticated, informed, effective, applied, okay, further research, individuality, links. These are some of the words that I've highlighted in yellow. In order to hit them, you must use the specialised concepts in geography. These pop up throughout the whole A-level, not just in independent investigation, but also in Unit 1, 2, 3 and 4. And they are concepts. And they're also buzzwords. They're not all on the screen now, but most of them are. So they include resilience, mitigation, risk, inequality. Threshold is another one. And when writing your work, please use the concept, the specialised concept. You can't hit them all. It's impossible. Choose 2 or 3 that fit into your work, and I would like you to use the concepts in geography throughout your work. To hit the band 5, please use words such as risk, equilibrium, inequality, threshold, okay? You could even bring in one of these specialized concepts in geography into the tighter investigation of the question of your investigation. For example, this. Instead of asking, how does flooding affect the town of Llanrwst? Reword it like this. To what extent is Llanrwst a place that can withstand flooding? So yes, you've got the to what extent, but to what extent is Llanrwst a place that can withstand flooding? Here, you can hit the adaptation, the resilience, the mitigation, and the risk, okay? And by setting your question up properly, it will help you find the concept and be able to slot it into your work. And we're now on to referencing, and this is essential. You must reference. There's two ways you can do this. You could either try the Harvard referencing or use footnotes. I would use Harvard. It takes more skill. You're gonna have to learn how to do it, but you're gonna learn how to do. You're gonna have to do it in university. So why not learn now? Okay. There are numerous websites online and tutorials and YouTube clips that can help you with Harvard referencing. And the handy website is www.citethisforme.com. And students should not, under any circumstances, just submit a list of URLs. I know that referencing will probably be left to last. A top tip that I give my pupils is that to do it as you go along. That's easier said than done. So I would open a Word document that you can put in the information and the list of websites and the sources of your secondary information in there. So when it does come into referencing, it's only in Word, one document, okay? And look online for any tips on how to do the referencing. So to conclude then my presentation today, choose a topic that is of interest to you. You are going to spend a lot of time on this. Think carefully about the question and sub-questions or hypotheses. If you write a good question and you write good sub-questions or hypotheses, it will just help your investigation so much. Remember to justify your data collection methods. Use the geographical concepts when analysing, interpreting, and in the conclusion. Here they are there. Also, this book here, this one is the Welsh one, but in here there's a definition of each one, and they're also in the specification. If you're not sure how to put these in your investigation, ask your teacher. Evaluate each step rigorously, right, of your investigation in the evaluation. Another useful resource, this comes from Aberystwyth University, Prifysgol Aberystwyth, is this video. And I've got the QR code there and the website URL link there. And it's a half-an-hour video from Professor Mark Whitehead explaining step by step. Just another person explaining how to conduct a successful independent investigation. Right, diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much for tuning in. And next session, which is going to be a week today at 5:20, we are going to look at Unit 3, it's a core unit, and we'll focus on the water cycle. Okay, so diolch yn fawr, and I will see you next week.